is just stupid wokeness. Just don't look at Virginia, New Jersey, Long Island, Buffalo, Minneapolis, Seattle. Okay, we talked about that. It's really has just a suppressive effect all across the country on Democrats. Some of these people need to go to a woke detox center or something, Carville said. They're expressing language that people don't use, and there's a backlash and a frustration to that. And again, they go on to talk about how Virginia Governor McAuliffe lost the race to Terry Youngkin. And, Terry Youngkin didn't even use a negative campaign. New Jersey, Governor Phil Murphy barely won against the Republican candidate, barely won. And Carville is just talking about, hey, we need to stop this stuff. And Don Lemon, when it came to the defund the police slogans, he agreed with Carville. For a guy like Don Lemon to go against leftist ideology, that should tell you something. Because Don Lemon is, sure, he's a CNN reporter, but he's more of an activist reporter. And even when a left-wing activist reporter goes against the grain on some of this stuff, you've got to pay attention to it. Because there's the fringe, and then there's the extreme fringe. And these defund the police people, and many on the far left of the Democratic Party, are beyond the fringe. To say they're even in single digits with people that agree with them is being kind. Pardon me. Hang on just a minute. No, that wasn't coffee. It was water, just in case you wonder. Okay, we've talked about Democrats. Now let's talk about a Republican who's in the same boat. And this was actually a story that I dug up from the Washington Post a while back. And it had to do with Liz Cheney, Republican from Wyoming, Dick Cheney's daughter. She was the number 3 ranking Republican in the House and was replaced by Representative Elsie Stefanik from New York. And you remember this because Cheney won against Donald Trump in that she said, nope, the elections weren't fixed. Yeah, the January 6th riots were not good. And yeah, we need to go ahead and impeach President Trump. And the party turned on her. Now, why did they turn on Cheney? Why did they want to replace Cheney with Stefanik? Because is Stefanik more conservative than Cheney? Because the Republicans are supposed to be the conservative party, right? No, that's not it at all. In fact, Liz Cheney had an 80% lifetime rating with the Heritage Action for America Association. Stefanik, 48%. 80% to 48%. So Cheney voted more conservative by a big margin. So why else would they want to replace Cheney with Stefanik? Is it because she voted, she had more loyalty to President Trump? Actually, no. When it came to voting, Cheney voted with Trump 92.9% of the time. 92.9% of the time. While Stefanik voted with Trump 77.7% of the time. Now, indeed, Stefanik steadfastly opposed key elements of the Trump agenda. Stefanik voted against Trump's singular legislative achievement, his 2017 tax reform bill. She voted against it. She voted against making his tax cuts permanent. She voted to block Trump from withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accords. She voted to condemn Trump for calling on the courts to invalidate the Affordable Care Act. She voted to overturn Trump's emergency declaration at the southern border so he could fund the border wall. And then she voted to override Trump's veto of the bill that reversed his emergency declaration. Trump calls Cheney a warmongering fool who wants to fight ridiculous, endless wars. But Stefanik voted with Cheney to oppose Trump's withdrawal of U.S. forces from Syria. Now, in his statement, Wednesday supported Cheney's, or Wednesday months ago, supporting his ouster of Cheney. Trump once again slammed the congressional certification of the 2020 elections, declaring, had Pence referred the information on 6 states, and Trump really only did 2, back to the legislative the state legislators, we would have had a fair and different presidential results. Stefanik voted to clarify the elections in Arizona, not Pennsylvania, but she voted to clarify the elections in Arizona. So she wasn't with Trump on that either. So why is Trump giving Stefanik his complete and total endorsement to replace Cheney? None of this has anything to do with voting with the president. It's not to do with ideology or public policy. It's not even loyalty to Trump. It's about Trumpism. It's about loyalty to Trump. Now, I've said this many times. While I'm not really a fan of President Trump, or wasn't a big fan of President Trump, the way he went about things, the vast majority of what he wanted to do, I thought it was fantastic. The tariffs, the tax breaks, most of that stuff was just fantastic. I liked it, as did Liz Cheney. She voted with him almost 93% of the time. And if I were in Liz Cheney's boots, I probably would have too. 90% of what Trump did, I liked. I liked it a lot. Just didn't like the way he went about it. And that's kind of what Cheney was saying. But this had nothing to do with loyalty to Trump's ideas. It had to do with loyalty to Trump, the person. And even though Cheney supported Trump's agenda in Congress, the GOP believes she must be purged because she supported impeachment and the certification of the election. And, most importantly, she refuses to apologize for it. Now, one anonymous GOP House member told The Hill, this isn't about Liz Cheney wanting to impeach Donald Trump. This isn't about Donald Trump at all. It's about Liz Cheney being completely out of sync with the majority of our conference. That is, the party. In other words, Liz Cheney wasn't going to do the business of the party. She was voting with her conscience and the way she believed the people of the state of Wyoming believed. But isn't that what they all should be doing? Now, after the January 6th riot, Republican leader Kevin McCarthy from California, he declared on the House floor that, quote, the president bears responsibility for the House, for the attack on Congress by the mob riders, and demanded that Trump take immediate action and accept his share of responsibility. Now, while McCarthy didn't support impeachment, he supported what would have been a resolution to censure Trump for his role in the January 6th riots, which would have been a historic rebuke. The Republican leader voting to censure his sitting president. But now here's the real difference between here's the real difference between Cheney and McCarthy. McCarthy backed off on his criticism of Trump, while Cheney refuses to do so. Basically, after the riots, McCarthy declared that Trump should immediately denounce the crowd when he saw what was unfolding. But then he said just the opposite, telling Fox News that Trump told him on the phone during the riots that he'd put something to make sure that this was stopped. And that was good enough for McCarthy. In other words, McCarthy didn't vote with his conscience, didn't speak with his conscience. He spoke with the party, because Donald Trump is the most powerful man in the Democratic Party, or in the Republican Party. Now, the House Republicans say Cheney is a distraction from their efforts to win back the majority in the 2022 elections and check the Biden administration's worst excesses. In other words, it's all about our party. We have to do the work of the party, not the people. The Republicans are backing a candidate. Her name is Harriet Hageman. She's the Trump candidate running against Cheney. Now, here's the deal, and here's my prediction. Liz Cheney will beat Harriet Hageman. Why, you say? Hageman's getting tons of money from the Republicans. David Thiel, the big Republican backers are throwing a lot of money towards Harriet Hageman. But a lot of people are throwing money towards Liz Cheney too. And it's just not Republicans. It's centrist Republicans and Democrats in Wyoming. Now you think, why would a Democrat in Wyoming throw money towards Liz Cheney? After all, she voted with President Trump 92.9% of the time. So she's not a liberal. She's not even a moderate. She's pretty conservative. But she's a conservative who dared to say Trump did the wrong thing and would not back off even though her dopey party told her to. She didn't back off because she didn't feel that it was right. She's a statesman. She's doing what she thinks is right. But she's getting all this Democratic money because in Wyoming, the Democrats not going to win. But they really do think that Cheney would be the better candidate, even though she voted 92.9% of the time with President Trump. That, my friend, is a silver lining to a dark cloud. Joe Manchin, Liz Cheney, Byron, what's his face? The guy from Buffalo, New York, Byron Brown. Thank you. And the fact that people in Minnesota rejected the defund the police. Those are all reasons to smile about where this country is going. I've said this multiple times, and I'll continue to say it multiple times. Sure, this country's not perfect. It'll never be perfect. There's nothing in this world that's perfect. My podcast isn't perfect. Shocking, I know. You probably don't agree with me, but no, the podcast isn't perfect. Nothing is perfect. But when you compare us to any place else in the world, even when you compare us to places that are wonderful places to live, Western Europe, Australia, Canada, we're still in better shape than they are in many, many respects. When it comes to standard of living, when it comes to freedom, when it comes to anything, we're still the best game in town. There are no coup d'etats here. We don't have people shooting somebody in the head and taking over. We've never devalued our currency, or we've never exchanged our currency like they do in Argentina or so many other countries. We've always done the right thing. We've always come out ahead. And that's because the people of this country, in the end, come to their senses and do the right thing. And I think this time is absolutely no exception. Well, that's it. We're done. Have a good day. Have a good weekend. Have a good week. JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. That's the email address. By the way, I did get a lot of good emails and instant messages, etc., recently on the podcast. So keep it up. I do answer all my emails, and love to have the conversation. Thank you all for that. And if you want to get the podcast delivered to your email each and every week, JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. Send me your email address. I will put you on the mailing list. I will go ahead and email you a link to the podcast upon publication, and you can download it and listen to it at your leisure. You can also get the podcast any place you get podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, you name it, it's there. It's on every format known to man. You can get it on iHeartRadio. That's a popular one. You name it, it's there. Okay. In fact, if you have a Castbox, if you have a way you like to get it and you don't see the podcast on there, let me know. I'll make sure that it's on there. Okay. And of course, Spreaker.com. That's it. Have a good weekend, folks. Until next time, this is James Strong saying adios.